I think this is what it's like being on the cutting edge. By the way, I mean it happens. It's all good. The iPhone, the iPhone's interesting. I think it's really good. I think that it is revolutionary in many ways, and a lot of the people who don't get the iPhone, I think that's because they say, well, come on, there are other smartphones that do this feature and this feature and this feature. It's like, okay, first off, not very many smartphones have all these features. And second, it's the execution. I mean, it's the same reason why the iPod is better than the Zune. I mean, a lot of it has to do with execution. A lot of it has to do with the user interface. One of my guys who is really bright on this subject, Chris Breen, who writes for MacWorld, the way he put it was, I'm pretty sure some of these features were on my last phone, but I was too stupid to know how to use them, which I take umbrage at the idea that you're too stupid. I think the device is a failure if a relatively intelligent human being cannot figure out some basic features of the device. But the fact is that's what makes the iPhone pretty cool, is that Apple is really focused on exposing all these features in a way that isn't the same way that every other smartphone does, which is by adding a bunch of new buttons and a bunch of obscure things that you would never understand. That said, it's still a version 1 product. I mean, Apple seems to have taken the philosophy of omitting features if they weren't ready to go yet, which is weird, but when you realize that they'll be able to do iPhone software updates as we go along here, we'll probably be seeing a lot more features added to the product in the next few months. So, there are some weird gaps in its feature set right now, and I assume that's just because Apple needed to ship it, and they decided to omit those features rather than have them be there but bad or not work right, which is probably a good approach, because the end result is that the iPhone is really, what's on it is really solid. It's much more polished than I expected from a first version of a product. I keep gesturing over here. It's because I've got an iPhone over here, so that's why I'm doing that. So, let's see. Well, so the lock screen has got a picture of my kids, so that's pretty basic, and then there's the standard menu, and then I've got a bunch of stuff on here. I've got some audio, I've got some pictures, I've got video. I've actually got some of the fall pilots because I'm working on this project to talk about what the fall pilots are on the networks for just as a hobby on the side, not a Macworld kind of thing. And yeah, it's been great. I have not been using any other iPod since I got it, and I've used it for email a little bit, which I had a Trio before, and I never used email, or almost never, because it was just, not because I couldn't do it, but because it was not pleasurable to try to do it. It was a pain to even get email out of it. And that goes to the heart of, I think, why the iPhone has appeal. It's not that these other devices can't do those things. It's that you don't want to do them because they're too hard, or you don't even know you can because they're too obscure. And the iPhone is about exposing all of those features in a way that a regular person can actually use it. I was on AT&T before. I understand some people have terrible experiences with it. It's okay. It works for me. I haven't had any drop calls. I get decent reception in my house. I used to not, but in the last year or so, I've gotten better reception in my house. The Edge network, which is the digital network that Apple uses, and it's controversial because it's this 2G, second generation network. It's not the super fast third generation network that's out there now. And it's okay, but it varies pretty widely. If you're in certain areas, the edge speeds are really slow, and if there's a lot of traffic, they can get really slow, and at other times it's really usable. So it's kind of a crapshoot. I've had both, and when edge is good, it's fine, and when it's bad, it's bad. That's one of the reasons why, it's funny, with all the hype about the iPhone, one of the things that I tell people that they seem to have not known about the iPhone is that it does Wi-Fi, and that's the key, is that if you're in a place with Wi-Fi, you don't use the Edge network, you use these super fast Wi-Fi networks, and once you've set up the password for that Wi-Fi network in a place you go, it just logs you in as soon as it gets there. So when I'm at work, I'm on the Wi-Fi. When I'm at home, I'm on the Wi-Fi, and that makes it a lot faster and a lot better experience too. Yeah, or just happen to be in a place where the edge network is good, and it sounds like it's getting better, but it's never going to be faster than a certain ceiling, and for that we're going to have to wait for an iPhone a piece of hardware in the future from Apple that uses that third generation network. But they have lots of reasons to do that. I think the big reason that everybody's assuming why the iPhone doesn't do the 3G cell phone network is that it would have used up so much battery power that the thing wouldn't have any battery life at all, and so they opted to sort of use some tried and true technology instead, which is interesting from Apple. They usually like to push it, so they must have had some really good reasons not to be on the cutting edge with that one. I'm not. It has pretty good battery life. It doesn't have a removable battery, and that's been the big criticism because, theoretically, if you're at the end of your battery life and you've got a spare battery, you can swap it in and keep going. Now, I've had cell phones I'm going to say I've had a relatively smartphone for 6 or 7 years now, and not once have I ever even thought that I should have had a second battery for it. So I don't get it, but I understand there are people who use their cell phone all the time, and they really abuse the battery, and they like having a second. We're going to see a bunch of battery backup products where there are little things like there are for the iPod. Actually, the ones that are out there for the iPod now will work with the iPhone, where you just put batteries in a little box that plugs to the bottom of the phone, and it recharges the phone, or it lets you operate the phone. So people will make some of that stuff for emergency conditions. And the other knock on it is that you can't take the battery out when it's at the end of its life and replace it. And that's true. It's also true for the iPod. And the reality is that the life of these products, by the time that battery is unusable for you, you probably will have long since wanted to go or have already gone to a new model. So, and also, if it's anything like the iPod, by the time the iPhone battery in 3 or 4 years kind of wears out to the point where it doesn't hold a charge, there will probably be lots of places where you'll be able to take it or mail it and have them swap it, or have them mail you a kit and let you swap the battery yourself. I'm sure that's all going to happen. So I don't think it's that big a deal. If you're somebody who has to go for days at a time on one charge and relies on multiple external battery, or swappable batteries, then it's not for you. But I don't think that's a lot of people. Uh, Up to the later this year part, I think that makes sense. I don't think it's going to happen that quickly, but I do think the iPhone is going to be just like the iPod. You're going to get in a situation where over time the price is going to come down and the product line is going to spread out, and you're going to end up with a bunch of different iPhone models to choose from. And I would think, eventually when their exclusive deal with AT&T runs out, they might even offer different models on different carriers, but it's going to be a long time before that happens, I think. But sure, I think there'll be a smaller iPhone and a super full-featured big one and a super slim one eventually. But I think the iPod went through 3 generations before the Mini came out, and I think we'll probably see something like that with the iPhone. I could be totally wrong. I don't have any inside information, but that would be my guess. Is that it'll be a little while, but it will happen. Well, the Apple TV is funny. Steve Jobs referred to it as sort of Apple's hobby. It's not quite the fourth part of their product line: the Mac, the iPod, the iPhone, and then there's this hobby, and there's the Apple TV. It's a product that has a huge amount of potential, and it's just not there yet. And the question is going to be, does Apple want this product to be a success, or does Apple want to basically use this product to trap people inside the iTunes ecosystem? Because the Apple TV is this cool product. You attach it to your TV. I've got an HD TV kind of right over my shoulder. You hook it up to your HD TV, you put it on your network. It plays back videos from iTunes, it plays back all your music. As a video player, I love it. I love being able to watch videos that I've got in another room stored on a hard drive, and I watch them on my HD TV. Looks great, sounds great. I never have to burn a DVD. I can just download them off of the internet, off of iTunes, or you can. Not to give too much away here, but there are other videos out there on the internet that can be downloaded from other sources, and they'll play back on there too. The problem is, now it does YouTube, which is good, but there's this whole spectrum of web video out there. And for the Apple TV to succeed, Apple's got to embrace that. They've got to accept that, if ABC.com is streaming HD quality shows from ABC with commercials on their website, that Apple has two options there. They can say, no, the Apple TV is for people who want to pay $2 per episode to watch shows from ABC. The other approach Apple could take is say, okay, you know what? If you want to watch it with commercials for free, you can, and we'll hook it up. And if you don't, and you want to pay instead, you can do that too. Or, going out for streaming, like there are streaming services on the web, like Major League Baseball has live Major League Baseball games streamed on video. It's using Windows Media, but there's a Windows Media plugin for the Mac. I use it to watch those games. It works great. So they could support that if they wanted to. It would be outside the iTunes ecosystem. They need to come up with a way to have it all work, but they could do it. You go on, there are whole channels that are like that. The Al Jazeera English channel is like that. It's not available in the U.S. on almost any cable system, but you can pay $9 or something a month and get it. Why not do that through the Apple TV? But that requires Apple to say, our whole model here is not just about downloading things from iTunes and putting it on your iPod or your Apple TV. And I don't know whether they'll do that or not. I hope they do, because I think that it's a must for the product to succeed. The fact that YouTube is on the Apple TV now is great, but I think it is damning when you look at the fact that it wasn't there when it started. And it was the most obvious feature of that product, and it wasn't there when they came out with it. It just doesn't make any sense. They were so focused on the iTunes stuff that they just, YouTube, we'll deal with it later. It's like, how can you make a video product connected to the internet and not have YouTube on there? It doesn't make any sense. So I think they're their own worst enemy with the Apple TV, and if they want to open it up, then there's a lot of stuff that could happen with it. But if they lock it down, it's just going to be kind of like an iPod that's attached to your TV, and that's can be cool, and for some people it can be useful, but it's never going to be a huge success. If they open it up and apply their ease of use that they've got everywhere else to this, it could be really cool. So I hope they do that. Great.